Before we begin the homily, I have two kind of commercial announcements to make. The first, just ran out of my head. No, the first one is in regard to communion. This is the flu season. And we have been getting questions about, will we discontinue communion from the cup? And what about the sign of peace and all those other things? After profound research and studying both in Latin and in Greek and in Hebrew and going deep into this, we have come to the conclusion that you should use your common sense. If you're sick, stay home. Okay? If you're not feeling well when you come to church, do not take communion from the cup. If you're afraid that maybe the person in front of you wasn't feeling well when they received, then you refrain from the cup. No one is obliged to receive communion from the cup. It is a personal choice. One that I encourage under normal circumstances, but obviously the flu season is not normal circumstances. And so therefore, until we hear otherwise, just prudence and common sense. Now that comes after a great deal of research. You know, we Catholics are a funny group of people. Last week you heard Deacon Bill on the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord say, Christmas is now over. Put all the decorations away. Life gets back to normal. And then we get here today, the second Sunday of ordinary time, and we're at the wedding feast of Cana. Take out the decorations, get going again. What is this? The fact is we Catholics like to party. I mean, you know that as well as I do. You know, the first miracle that Jesus performs in the Gospel of John is turns water into wine. I like this guy. But there's something much more profound. Here we are at the beginning of the public ministry of Jesus. Remember, last week was the baptism. Now we're into ordinary time, the public ministry of Jesus, reflecting on what it means for you and I as disciples to follow the Lord Jesus. And even though we're reading from the Gospel of John, we're reading Luke all through the rest of the year. But the church borrows from John because the Gospel of John is written after the end of the first century. The temple has been destroyed. Judaism now centers itself around synagogues. That's where the Judaic life is happening, in the synagogue. And Christians, who previously have been accepted into the synagogues as, you know, that kind of sect of Judaism that was following the prophet, Jesus, now are being thrown out of the synagogues. And so a lot of them are hiding their faith in Jesus Christ, one, to avoid persecution by the Romans, and two, so they don't get thrown out of the synagogues by the rest of their friends and family. And John writes to them now, with the wedding feast at Cana at the beginning of the public life of Jesus. And he says to them, right from the very beginning, the cross is there. And we must make a choice. Because you see, when Mary goes over to Jesus and says, they've got no more wine. And Jesus responds, what's that got to do with me? It's not my hour. The hour in the Gospel of John refers to the cross. The hour when Jesus is revealed and accomplishes his mission refers to the cross. It's not that time yet. And the water, which would have been used for ceremonial washings, turned to wine, going from the old into the new. This imagery, this rich imagery, applying to the life and the teaching of Jesus. And then at the end of this passage, John says, and it was now that his glory was revealed, and many people came to believe in him. The glory of Jesus specifically means those times when the full revelation of Jesus as the Son of God is made known. In the Gospel of John, it happens 7 times. The greatest of them being the cross and resurrection. And so right from the very beginning, John lays out for his readers that to believe in Jesus means you have to take a stand. And taking a stand means to suffer. Can't get around it. Because that's how the glory is revealed. That we move from the old into the new. We move from what was into what must be and what will be. And we do it not because, well, we think this Jesus is a nice guy and maybe he's got something good to offer, but because we believe that Jesus is in fact the divine Son of God, and therefore his message is true. That's a tough message for us to hear. You know, back when Christianity, or in general, was being persecuted, and Catholics in particular were being persecuted, we could identify with that. But now our desire is to kind of go mainstream. You know, and Catholics look just pretty much like everybody else, except for, you know, we have our Catholic calisthenics and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what it's about. What is there in our life that says that we have sat down and taken a clear, hard look to see who are we as followers of Jesus? And what is it that distinguishes us? Do we recognize that by virtue of our baptism, we are directly connected to the sacrifice of the cross, right from the very beginning? And there's no getting around it, because it's in this, the willing embrace of God's will for us, that God's glory is revealed, not only in Jesus, but in us, his followers.